Ni kia kōpū, o lua karakia. E te whānau hui, whaia te mataronga kia mara. Kia whai take nā mahi katoa. Tu maia, tu kāma, aroha atu, arho mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. For this gathering, seek knowledge, understanding, have purpose in all that you do. Stand tall, be strong. Let us show respect for each other. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you. Well, everybody online who should be online. Raising their hand, please. Okay, I'll call for apologies and any absences. So any apologies? There being none, can I get a seconder, please?
I'll move.
Rika and Terry, thank you. Those in favour? Aye. We'll move straight to public forum, and we've got first up is Dennis T. Welcome, Dennis.
Where do I point this?
Yeah, sure.
Morena.
Morena.
My name's Dennis Tegg, and thanks for this opportunity. A few weeks ago, I was invited to attend an NZ Sea Rise conference in Wellington. So I wanted to come along today and give you an overview of what I believe are serious implications for Thames. And on the screen are the four main points I wish to make. So context, we've seen this before. This is a meant from the SMP project of a 1 in 20 year event of Thames. That's without subsidence. So the NZ Sea Rise project has led to a major change in government guidance to councils, which now requires locally known land subsidence rates to be added to the sea level rise rate. So which subsidence rates?
Sorry to interrupt, can I, so I don't have to take notes. Is this?
No, I'll send another copy around to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So which subsidence rate is suitable for Thames? Well, there's a whole host of them up there, but they range from 13 millimetres a year at Richmond Villas to 5 millimetres a year in the latest Tonkin and report. But we take a medium IPC, not an extreme, a medium sea level rise projection, and then we add just 5 millimetres of subsidence. You can see from these NZC graphs it doubles the rate for Thames. That means that we reached 0.3 metres of sea level rise 20 plus years earlier than if we didn't have subsidence. And this is really the colour here. A 30 centimetre rise means that we have 1 in 100 year events every 4 years. And that would be by the late 1930s, according to this data. And if we had 8 millimetres, which is quite conceivable, I think, then we would have extreme events every 6 months between 40. So the takeaway from this is that even modest subsidence slices 2 decades off the time we have to adapt. And when intolerable and frequent flooding would occur. My first plea is that all Thames communities are fully informed of these implications of land subsidence, not just Moana Tairua. I think everyone's entitled to know this data. So my next point relates to what the really good work that the SNP panel, and I know Peter was on that, but unbeknown to them, they based their their adaptation options and for a seawall on outdated sea level rise projections. And they relied on a consultant's feasibility study, which factored in a 1 in 100 year event by 2120 and 1.4 metres of sea level rise. And the report itself acknowledges that they did not take account of land subsidence and the frequency of future events. New government guidance requires a stress testing, what they call stress testing, of a new project of 1.7 metres of sea level rise at 2130 plus subsidence. So if you take in an ongoing 5 millimetre subsidence, then you get a total of 2.5 metres, not 1.4. And that's shown in the blue table. So of course this raises serious questions about feasibility of that as an option and the cost implications vis-a-vis other options. And I wanted to quickly just finish with what I believe are information gaps in the project so far. And I think Council's well aware of this, but I just wanted to brief you on what I believe they should be. And the first is we really need robust survey data along the entire foreshore. Monotari has been studied a lot, but the rest of the foreshore has not. The second thing is we already know there are serious groundwater flooding issues. So there's been a major study done on this in South Dunedin, and I think we really need the same sort of emphasis here. For example, will the seawall actually prevent groundwater flooding? Is a real serious question we need to answer. And then there's an associated issue with contaminated sites. We've got 3 in that short area. So again, with the seawall, what difference would that make? And this is something well known to you. I think you've been lobbying yourself. We really need the government to stump up with, what it's going to do around managed retreat, its funding options, its policy. And only then, I think, can we really do a proper cost benefit analysis across all of the options. There are some other potential options. Linda Story has talked about climate leases. We have nature-based solutions. There's a huge body of work on that. And just to throw in another option, if we are to retreat, and that's not by any means, but if we are to retreat to where? And it seems to me that one of the options we have is Queen Street and State Highway. We're going to want to protect that at all costs. And that's on much more solid ground. And it's actually where the town is starting to uplift rather than subside. So I think, all these options need to be on the table. And finally, this is my wish list of the things I'd like to see the council do. So thanks for hearing me out. I know you've had more than your fair share of climate crises. Sorry to burden you with this one, but I think this one's just not going away. I have to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions?
Would it be appropriate to go back 3 or 4 slides?
Sure.
So the one showing the that Moanatari is not the greater risk.
Yeah, sure.
About maybe. Yeah. I really just want to have a quick look. I'm not sure that I want to actually ask you a question, but I just wanted to see it again because it was by quite.
Yeah, I think the point of making here is from that map, the blue areas are frequent day 1 in 20 risk. And so that would suggest they're have more immediate risk than Monotari.
Yeah.
So why are we not talking to those communities?
Okay, thank you.
I mean, you talk about Richmond Villas, the shopping centre, Grahamstown, and even this area right in here, how do we talk about it?
Thank you.
Thank you, yes. Other questions? I think it's fair to say that there are some big questions to be answered there. And was there any talk at that conference of a spongy citizen concept and
way that is starting to become part of urban planning?
I'm not sure that helps too much with the coastal inundation. I think that's more a question of stormwater issues. But certainly, you know, I mean, that feasibility study did factor in, I think, a 1 to 20 year rain event, which I think is quite modest. So if you consider that in the Hawke's Bay, all of the breaches of the stock banks in the Hawke's Bay were built to a 1 in 100 year event. And Recollecting has just put up a post on the Regional Council website. That's the few stock banks that were built to a 1 in 500 year standard only just held up. So the whole basis of relying on a 1 in 100 year event, I think, is completely out the window. It's just redundant. So to answer your question, I think we could have ways that slow down stormwater off the hills. You know, in the town, but I'm not sure that helps too much with coastal.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other questions? Much appreciated. Thank you. Slide. Sorry, that would be great. Okay. Alistair. So do we have another oral presentation?
Yeah. But something.
The plan as well as working in rate.
Thank you. Alistair, welcome.
Thank you, Glenn. Shame to be here on a lovely day, isn't it? Lovely being here. Anyway, okay, so personal submission. Just one point about what Dennis was saying, if I could. The tide gauges in New Zealand show a sea level rise of 1.4 millimeters a year, which is considerably less than what satellite data shows, which is what UN and New Zealand government people are relying on, shows 5 millimeters. The satellites are measuring from 1,500 kilometers up. The tide gauges are actually what's happening on the ground, 1.4 millimeters a year. Okay, I want to talk about waste management. There's a comment on the council website. We have an opportunity to develop a strategy to put our council on the map as a leader, innovator, and example to other councils. Well, I like to suggest that the present council plans are neither innovative or leading. I am a strong proponent of incineration, high temperature incineration. I think you all got a handout on this. The present plans, which are going to be voted on in September, are going to result in more time for all our ratepayers sorting waste. But it's wasted time sorting waste. We're going to have extra expensive rubbish bins to deal with. We're going to have extra washing of those bins, and there's problems with water supplies in some areas, especially the organic. The food waste bins are going to be very smelly if they don't get washed out regularly. Extra waste stream for the contractors, short-staffed contractors, and we've seen that just recently with short-staffing. They can't handle the collections. And it probably will result in more fly tipping because the costs are going to rise for ratepayers, and some low lives are going to increase the fly tipping. It's going to be more inconvenient, especially for batch owners. And I think Donald Nelson of the Whangapore ratepayers was presenting here on Friday, I think it was, and he mentioned how it's going to be quite awkward for Whangapore, especially with their 95% absentee ratepayers. What do they do with their rubbish? Okay, high temperature incineration. I've had an interest for a long time. A few years ago, we visited the facility in Bern, in Switzerland, which is the most modern one in Switzerland. The first page is the pictures of ones. Hunter Wasser, who you probably know, the Kawakawa toilets, and also the new Hunter Wasser Center in Pongaré. He was a great fan of incineration, and he came from Vienna. The bottom picture is the one that he was involved with in Vienna, and there's the ones in Osaka. The one in Bern is not quite so pretty. It's modeled on a container ship, it's interesting. So we did a tour of it, more expensive, about 50 euros. But anyway, you can see in the top picture what they take. It's basically everything in your blue bag, including batteries. So there's no need for households to sort what goes into their rubbish. Everything just goes into the bin, into the bag, whatever. Then it goes into the incineration plant. There's no need to waste time sorting. The rubbish collection is greatly simplified. Of course, it's much simplified. And it reduces the volume to landfill by up to 97% overseas, which is a significant cost saving. And the advantage of it generates electricity. You can generate, the Swiss one generates, I think, 24 megawatts of generates electricity. And this is base load generation. It's not like wind turbines or solar panels don't work at night or wind's not blowing. This is a steady baseline. It's a bit like our geothermal and hydro. So it's a reliable source of electricity. And the one in Switzerland is quite small, but they recover 5 tons of iron a day to be recycled and 5 tons of non-ferrous metals, which is your copper, iron, and your precious metals. So there's a generation of revenue stream from doing that. And depending on the design, they can actually accept car tires. They don't like particularly car tires being dumped in. They prefer them shredded. And you can also put in your sewage sludge waste from your plant, because that is organic material and will burn if it's hot enough. And you can make power from it. So basically your plastics are not a problem. They're a resource. You know, we use it once for protecting our food for hygienic reasons, or maybe twice. Well, I've used the plastic bags twice. Then they go in and we make power out of them. It's a resource, not a waste. It's traditionally been frowned upon by the environmentalists, Greenpeace in Europe in particular, and they were worried about dioxin. Well, dioxin is a problem, and Sweden has 32 plants. And they were producing 100 grams of dioxin nationwide about 15 years ago. They've now got that down with the newest technology to 0.5 grams of dioxin for the whole country from these plants. So it is absolutely not a problem. I think TCDC should be supporting this as a look at the alternative. Now we've got this great plan for September and all the new bins are going to come out, but perhaps we need to put that on hold. I mean, times are tough. Put it on hold for 5 years and just see how this technology develops. In the past, we could blame COVID for delays and changes of plans. That's getting worried a bit thin now, but we can use up storms and floods, and that's going on, I think. So maybe that's the way to tackle it. But I think we need to consider this technology, and more importantly, I'd like to see TCD support the Tairua plant. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. This is from the Waikato Herald in October 21st. Tairua Waste Energy Plan. It's by the race course down there. It's going through the hearing process with Waipa District Council and WRC. So I think council needs to keep an eye on this and submit on it and support it, because those sort of plans, maybe that one could be a solution for a lot of our waste problems going forward. I think we need to keep an open mind about this and think about this technology a bit more. Happy to answer any questions on incineration. And one thing it does support is this is 2019 New Zealand Herald. Many of the people that have been here for a while remember this fire. We used to have regular fires down in Kōpū, spontaneous combustion, smart energy of their milk bottles.
Is that your tiles?
This is milk bottles, I think, main milk bottles, when they compress them to stack them up. And what happens is there's a hiccup in the distribution or supply of facilities to treat milk bottles or whatever, and funnily enough, they spontaneously combust. We've seen it happen down at Christchurch with tires, and some of them, and globally tires spontaneously combust, and there's no way to get disposed of them. But incineration plants can deal with them if they're designed properly. The best way is to chip them up, because there's iron in there, and the tires, of course, and the weave, and the rubber is a hydrocarbon that burns really well and generates heat. So it's a technique I think council needs to look at, possibly associated with the local government, other councils, and that sort of thing.
So Alistair, I know you were going to talk on behalf of the residents and ratepayers, but we'll take these one at a time, if that's okay. So I'll ask for questions from Alistair on the waste issue. Roland, and answer.
How's it? My reading about waste, and of course we've all been reading a lot about waste in the last little while because it's been a big issue for us. And most of the opinions that we're getting is that we as a society need to reduce waste. Right. So I've got 2 questions for you. One, how does incineration promote the reduction of waste in the first place? And secondly, how is building a facility like this cheaper than the things we've got planned in the annual plan and, you know, going forward through our waste strategy?
Well, it reduces the collection costs. Things are simplified. It reduces the volume of waste by up to 97%. So that's a huge saving in landfill costs. And landfills, in theory, are great, but they do have leachate problems. They do produce methane. Here you're producing methane, but it's in the plant. It's all captured. It's all used to generate heat and electricity. So it's a really good way to capture methane. Some big plant waste companies do to capture the methane, but it's never been successful.
But so there's nothing coming back onto people at their houses as a incentive to reduce waste.
Well, they have less sorting for a start. No, to reduce waste, no, but the plastic waste is not a waste, it's a resource. So you look at that way, you can use it to generate power and heat. And the waste heat is probably more appropriate in Europe, but the one in Bern in Switzerland, the waste heat is the plant's around here to the town, or the city, if you're in a big city. It goes to the university for heating and also hospitals. But elsewhere, you can use it to heat glass houses, and that's really quite useful.
I got the answer I needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Terry?
Yeah, Alistair, I really support what you're trying to say here. One of the things that in the world is ahead of us in a lot of these ways is volume, how much volume to run these machines. Have you had a idea about the scale and what we need to be able to provide to feed this?
Generally, there are very big plants, and the bigger ones cost between $350 and $500 million, which sounds like a lot, but it's about the cost of a A380 or a bus A380 or a small drilling rig or platform. So it's big once, but it's not big for companies and governments and the councils to do.
The other one was about how much volume we need to actually make these plants work. I remember the very issue there was that they couldn't get enough actual volume to make the thing productive.
Well, very it's an ideal site, because you've got the railway line back there, it's between Hamilton and Auckland, it's great. The Swedish one actually is a very big one. One of the more recent ones is very big, and they actually take waste from the UK. The UK doesn't have enough plants, and the Swedish one, they charge the UK to send them their waste. You can make money from your waste, and that's it's fantastic for the Swedes. So yeah, but you just have to design your plants on the right scale. A lot of small ones are coming on stream now, and there's in North America, there's looking at second and third generation ones, and each time the pollution goes down, the dioxins go down. The trick with dioxins is to keep the temperature high all the way through. It has to be 1,000 degrees all the way through the system.
Okay, what's technology there? Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. You note at the bottom, TCDC should actively support the Aramutu incineration proposal. So that's the one.
Yeah, it's on the Regional Council website. It's going through the process now.
Well, probably need to look at it, don't we?
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, this is from October 21st, New Zealand Herald, Waikato Herald. So it's in the process at the moment.
Thank you, Alistair. I have, this is first, let me say that in terms of us as a council looking at our waste strategy, one of the things that we've tried to adopt is that all options are on the table, and especially when it comes to technology and innovation. The big concern, I guess not concern, but the one thing we've got to be mindful of, and my question for you is alignment with the recently announced government policy on what is going to become mandatory waste collection, standardised across the country, so food waste, recycling and general waste, and what you're saying is don't send it away, don't send it away. That would seem to be directly contrary to what the government's now announced, and I wonder where it leads Te Aramutu in their investigation of this as an option.
I don't know, I would suggest the government's lagging behind. That's their strategy. Because it can reduce considerably. And landfill's a problem. I mean, we use mines for landfill, we want more mines.
Are you aware of the limited availability?
Yeah, that's right. And it's not so much a problem here, but in Europe and North America, landfill costs are much more exorbitant than they are here. We haven't got to that stage yet, but it will happen.
So thank you for that. This is one thing I will raise with the Waikato Regional when we're talking to them about, particularly on the Merrill Ford. And I think it's a really good subject to have a discussion with them on a regional basis, because obviously it could only work regionally. I do wonder about when you've got the opportunity for energy to come back into the grid, how that would benefit us with facing Te Aramutu. I'm not sure how that.
Well, it all goes into the national grid. And it makes, and these base load plants make the grid more resilient to fluctuation in wind or at night time, the solar panels don't work. We need baseline generation, which is steady. You don't want to have boilers heating up and cooling down, as the clouds come and stop the solar panels or the wind stops. It's not good for the life of a power generation plant. Constant heating, cooling, the boilers, they don't like that. They like to be a steady base load generation. And that's why Huntley is so important, because it's on all the time. So, and the geothermal ones are on all the time. They're not up and down. Up and down kills any mechanical project, the traction and expansion.
Thank you, Alistair. No other questions? Okay, there being none, we'll move to the second part of the presentation, which is Kōpū residents.
Okay, thank you. So this is going to be quite short. I'm a committee member of the Kōpū Residents Director Association. I just want to make a couple of comments on the long-term plan. One of the things will be the cost of the new waste plant system. We're talking about coming September. It's going to be $2 million. That's a lot of money, and there's a lot of projects which I think all communities would rather have that money spent on. I know there's it looks like there's a 50% reduction in grants to community boards.
Can I ask a qualifying question here? Because this is something that's open for submission at the time. Is it more appropriate for Kōpū and ratepayers to make a submission to the annual plan rather than to hear it here?
I'm not quite sure of the essence of the submission or the essence of the presentation of public forum. So I'm a little bit confused. I think you make a very good point.
Well, it's just that it's open for consultation at the moment, and we will be having hearings about what you're talking about with the. So I just wonder if it's more appropriate for that to be part of the submission process rather than, and the hearing process rather than here. Can we get a governance view on that?
Chair, I would agree with that, because it could be subject to a hearing, which it sounds like it is. So it sits in a quasi-judicial capacity.
Thank you. So, Alistair, if that's the guidance I'm getting, if your public forum presentation is more directed towards the annual plan submission process, then we would prefer to stay in here.
Okay.
Is there anything else from the Kōpū residents and ratepayers that you wanted to cover off?
No, that was just our concern that the funds are going to communities.
And that submission process is valuable for us as councillors. We need those that input in those submissions. So
we will be submitting.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair.
So can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Who's received forum, Delhi and Peter? Thank you. All those in favour? All right. 1.3, are there any items not on the agenda?
I'd had a raise the matter, but that has now been answered. Donna sent me some information, and it was interesting. I just sent an email slightly before on my 2020 request for similar information, and then moments later, her one came. So that might well be discussed at council only time.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move to conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Being none, we'll move to item 1.5, which is minutes for confirmation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the report and receive community board and committee minutes?
I'll move that.
John, thank you.
I'll second that.
Rebecca. All those in favour?
Aye.
All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? And this is just to receive. This is not the detail of the individual. So this is just to receive. Okay. Sorry. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carry on. Okay, clause 3, we're going to confirm the council minutes for Thames Coromandel District Council. This is the minutes for meeting on 21st of February, the hearing on 22nd of February, and the meeting on the 9th of March. So we're confirming the minutes for those meetings. Any discussions? Sorry.
Just what page are we on the 5?
Page 5.
I've just, we've got a discussion, just a quick one, just clarification really. Point 6 is on page 6. The land that's been, council working with regional council, can you just confirm where that is? I'm just trying to, stop bank and floodway, is it the stop banks? I don't know.
We're on resolution 3 at the moment.
Sorry?
We're on 3.
I think we're taking it resolution by resolution, so
Oh,
we're on
okay,
resolution
one by
just
one.
3 at the moment, yeah.
Okay.
So, we'll come to that, I think.
Through the chair, we will come to that when we discuss the team screening board recommendations. So we'll hold over council what this question until then.
Okay, so we need to get this one through.
So through the chair, we are currently looking at clause 3, which is to confirm the council minutes.
Right.
For those 3 meetings.
Correct.
21st of February, hearing on 22nd of February and 9th of March. Have I got a move in a second? Move in a second, Martin and Robin, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay. Clause 4A, that to approve the Tairua Common Week recommendations, Tairua Common Week Community Board. I've got a page up.
Through the chair, that's on page 5 of the agenda.
Okay, so we're approving the clause 4A of the recommended staff recommendations. Can I get a mover in a second? Terry,
I'll second.
Terry, all those in favour?
Aye.
Right, we're going to move to clause 5, the Pakura Community Board recommendations. This is approving the Community Board recommendations, clause 5. So, can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Terry and Kelly, thank you. All those in favour? Approved. Clause 7, Risk and Assurance Committee recommendations.
Through the chair, we missed clause 6, which is the Thames Community Board recommendations.
And 6, isn't it?
It's on page 8, 6.
Page, out of order in my run sheet, which is the, thank you. My apologies. So, clause 6, to approve the Thames Community Board recommendations for staff. Can I get a mover and a second, please? Peter, Martin, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Carried.
Oh, did you? Sorry, just a point of clarification that, with Councillor Walker's question, that is stop bank and floodway.
Stop bank and floodway.
Yeah, WRC.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
So can I just ask a quick question around that? So it's regional council land, is it? And you're doing a lease on it? Is that how I read it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, real good. Just want to know where it was.
Annual rent, $6,000. That answer your
60.
question?
Yeah, just-
$60. $60.
That's the admin.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Oh, $60 is the admin.
Admin.
The annual rent, $6,000.
My apologies.
Thank you. So apologies for getting out of order. We're going back now to Mercury Bay Community Board. I'll get myself back in order here, which is okay. So clause 7. Mercury Bay Community Board recommendations. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Grant. Councillor Cole. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. And we're on to risk and assurance. I'm just going to take that and get it back in order. And I can't blame anyone but myself because I was. Right, thank you. Risk and Assurance Committee minutes for confirmation. Can I remove the statement, please? Terry,
I'll second.
Rebecca. Now, just before we vote on that, there are going to be updates on the Mineral Discretionary Fund and Disaster Relief Fund in the CE report.
Cool.
So the numbers have moved since these reports. So all those in favour? Okay. We're coming to item 2.1, Tairua Skatepark design approval. I'm going to give councillors an update here because there's been some correspondence come in overnight on the Tairua Skatepark project. There are some questions and concerns that we need to clarify, and some numbers which need to be revised and looked at. So out of abundance of caution, I've asked that that be put back, that we don't proceed with this approval today because we need to be clear about the information that we're working on.
Well, can we ask what the information you're after?
So there was some legal correspondence from the Kōpū Protection Society came in last night.
Yeah.
That just today during
One this morning.
one this morning.
Yeah, with some experts' advice disagreeing with the other. Can I just say something? I've had many all dealing with experts.
Sorry, before you do that, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report. And I might get some guidance as to
I'll move to receive the report.
Yeah, I'll second it.
whether we park the whole resolution, because I'd like to move it until the 26th of April. The councillors have asked the reasons. Can I get some guidance on whether we can discuss that or whether we should just move the whole thing to the 26th of April? I think we need to discuss it and find.
Well, I can answer it for you. I can answer it for you. The letter that came last night.
Sorry, do we need to agree that we're going to discuss it before we discuss it?
Okay, so
I'm happy to discuss it, but we can't.
So we do.
What's
So
the process?
we've got a mover and a seconder to receive the report?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we have.
So Martin and
No, it was Gary and myself.
Through the chair, we already have councillor Gottlieb.
Gary's moved it.
thank you. Okay. Right, so we'll open it for discussion.
Can I just explain before you do open the discussion with it? If it involves, I don't know what it involves, if it involves legal opinion or something financial, could I suppose it's the public excluded part for discussion so that nothing is said that could cause us some.
I don't have a problem with that.
Would that be appropriate? I don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
I don't think he's talking money.
The details of the report are already in the public domain
And these letters are public.
everything that we've been discussing so far is public.
Sure, but what's happened is the letter last night and the letter this morning with the attachment. That's new. And maybe we can talk more freely if that's public excluded just on that aspect. Because you're saying put it off to April, I'm saying we need to consider whether we progress with this.
Yes, I agree with you, Gary. I'm just.
So I have concerns about some of the details of the report, both in the legal sense and in the budgeting numbers that have been given.
Well, that's what we can provide.
Councillors. So I'd like some clarification on those, which staff need time to do that. So I'm proposing that we move this motion, this resolution to the 26th of April.
No, well, I think we've just moved a motion for it to be discussed and it can be done public excluded. But I think that it's only fairness to the Tairua people that this be done. We can discuss it now if you want to then go away and reflect further, maybe so, but I've read what's come through and I can respond to it.
I understand what you're saying. Can we go into public excluded or can we move it to public excluded? Or can we do it now?
We can move it to public excluded, can't we? At the end of it, but thanks to public excluded.
First use maintenance of legal privilege.
That's the one.
I'm happy to do it so long as I've got the process correct. Okay, so I'm going to put a motion that we move public excluded to discuss the details of this.
So through the chair, would you like to do that now, or would you like to just do the item, like leave the item lying on the table? So we can do that with all the business, but there's some public.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
don't have a
we'll
problem with that.
discussion.
Yeah,
I think.
when we're in
So,
public.
through the chair, to help clarify this, could I move a motion that we move this item to the later part of the agenda where we are in public excluded and discuss it at that point?
Prefer that?
And
I'll second that motion.
is there any chance we can add to that to, if there's any staff input might be required to be able to get our legal person to have a quick look at this while we're discussing the other stuff, so they might be able to have some input, or was that too short notice?
They must have read it already.
I think it complicates it. This is just to enable us to have a conversation in public excluded. So
So we're moving this to public excluded at the end of the meeting. We don't have public excluded.
And through the chair, we're going to use 7.2A as reason for confidential, which is protect. Sorry, it's 7.2G to maintain legal privilege.
we can put that into my motion if you want to clarify that.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table that we use 7.2G to go to public excluded at the end, or included public excluded at the end, and we request staff, if they are able to, and if they're able to provide information during that public excluded session, speak to the motion at that time. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Morrissey, all those in favour? Aye. Thank you. We'll do that. Appreciate your patience on this one. We want to get this one right.
Get your things done.
Okay. Item 2.2 is community board terms of reference. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the report, please?
Move it.
Kelly? Robin? Okay. Now, the community board terms of reference, there are some changes that are being recommended in the terms of reference from what we have been using up till now, what is still in place now, and what are proposed. The community board chairs in a session yesterday expressed some concerns about the detail, and they wanted more time to look at this. I agree with this, so I'd like to, in item 2, and I don't know if you've got the update, I'm going to read it out. Item 2 directs the chief executive to email the community board chairs for feedback on the community board's terms of reference, with a response back from community board chairs by 26th of April. And the proposal will be that we bring this through to the 16th of May full council meeting. That gives community board chairs time to have a look at this, go through, come back with any feedback they want. So that is part 2.
If that needs a mover, does that need a mover? I'd be really happy to move that. I think that's an excellent move.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Would we share it with all community board members?
There was some discussion around that yesterday, and I'm personally happy for all community board members to be involved in that process. I would rather it went through the chairs.
Yeah.
Because we're on pretty tight time.
But with the community board,
Yeah.
through the chair, will deal with it.
Yeah.
I will also probably be raising a legal issue on this as well. I've had some I was going to have a bit of a debate today, but I will fire that shot across.
In what capacity?
Well, that this is gazumped by standing orders. Doesn't have the legal status that you're relying on.
So can I get a mover and a seconder? We've got councillor Rebel for item 2.
Yeah, I'll support that to go of that period of time to be discussed. I think it needs discussion.
So for item 2, all those in favour? Yes. And item 3, we'll leave that until it comes back to council on the 16th.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you. Appreciate it. Item 3.1, water renewals. We have Andrew Bowden here. Thank you, Andrew, to present and to answer any questions. I'll take the report as read and welcome Bruce as well. Andrew, Bruce, do you have anything to add to the report? You have to answer questions on.
Basically, if we happen to reduce the budget to 1.7 in October, I wouldn't be sat here in front of you now. So it's just we'd have managed the emergency works and the unavoidable reactive works within that 1.1 million. So that's the bottom line.
Thank you. Bruce, anything to add?
No, I think, good morning, councillors, through the chair. Andrew's given you a very direct answer to that question, as can be expected. So what I'd say, it is always tricky to kind of manage the flow. And obviously, the last thing we want to do is hold on to budgets and then not deliver on our commitments. You know, we've talked about that a lot over the years. So often we'll pull them back. And then with the understanding and the knowledge that there's a risk to that, we might need to come back and sit in front of you, as we are this morning, asking for to bring some money back.
So this is really the timing issue, isn't it? Correct.
Yes.
To respond and get things fixed because of storms and cyclones. So, questions?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just happy to move it.
No, yeah, discussion. We haven't-
Peter, do you have a question?
Just for absolute clarity, I assume bringing forward the budget to 23-24 means the budget 24-25 will be reduced by that amount as well.
Correct. Any further discussion?
Just refresh my, I've already talked to Andrew and Bruce. Didn't want to have any surprises dropped on them. So just refresh my memory, gentlemen, why did we reduce down to 1.7? What was our reasoning there?
So through the chair, really it was just to try and get our CapEx size right, get our CapEx program right sized.
Yeah.
And really just look at what where we could pull back in certain areas and just bring a bit more, take a little bit more risk, I suppose, on that we wouldn't actually need to deliver quite so much. Again, to come back to my point before, to make sure that we could actually deliver on what we have committed, we can deliver for the community. So it was really just trying to get the right size. And as I mentioned, sometimes things happen and you do need to come back and relook at the budget.
Yeah, I for a little bit longer, Terry.
Yep, no problem.
I have some issues with spending the $800,000 on an asset that in 6 months' time may very well not be ours. And when I read the paper, the risks of not spending that money didn't appear to be much of a risk at all, to be honest with you, Andrew. Maybe a possible loss in the level of service. That was the only one that really sort of concerned me. I know that some of the money from talking to you has been already been spent in anticipation of this going through, and that's fine, that's spent. I am really against spending any money we don't have to at this particular point in time. Because of the fact, as I said, we may lose that asset in 6 months' time. What money can we actually not spend that you've already spent a certain amount of the budget? What is not spent?
Could I address that? Most of this work is emergency work. It's not nice to have work or work that we could defer until, say, next year.
Yeah.
So that's the prime reason why we're looking for the money now. If it wasn't emergency work, John, I would probably agree with you, but it is. So it's unavoidable, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that didn't quite come clear. That wasn't quite clear in your recommendations about the risks of not doing it. It just had to look at how low, perhaps a risk to the level of service.
If I may just jump in there. So through the chair, the other point I would raise is that obviously we've got impending reform coming, which I think is what you referred to. From our perspective, in some ways it's better to get the work done and then have obviously the assets will transfer across, but the debt goes across with it. So from this perspective, we're actually getting stuff done for our communities and getting it sorted out before any reform or change happens, rather than tightening our belt and pulling back and then, you know, hoping that when it goes into the big entity, that will pop up to the top and get prioritised and get out the top and get what we need for our communities. So two different philosophies, I guess, and how you approach it. So yeah, different councils are approaching it ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally realise that we have to do business as usual as much as possible, but I don't want to be doing business that we don't actually have to do. So yeah.
Through the challenge, this is stuff we have to do. So it's definitely not discretionary stuff. It's not like we're off building a new playground that we don't need or something in that way of thinking, you know. So it's not we're not just choosing to feel like we want to go out and do these things. So
Gotta do it. Gotta keep the lights on.
Yeah, so, hi Bruce, Bowden. Yes, I was along the same lines as what Councillor Morrissey was talking about, but really the Three Waters issue, how it affected it. So none of this is planned work, is it? As I look at the words here, you've got unavoidable, emergency and emergency. So it's all emergency work that you haven't planned. Is that right?
correct. So there's planned works, and then so under renewals you have planned works, but then you do have the emergency or reactive. So there's planned renewals and reactive renewals, and these ones that we're talking about in the report here are reactive.
Reactive renewals.
Yes.
Right. So getting them done is going to help.
Yeah, it will, yes, definitely.
Okay, so that was my concern, and talking about the Three Waters, about where the money should be going at the moment. So I know we've got to do our capital program, and this is part of, we're going to get it done. It's good, but we didn't want to be able to put these projects up front and then see them affect what was going to happen down the line. Okay, so yeah, okay, so I'm getting the feel that it's necessary.
All right, any further discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. So move on to second bit, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it.
Move Terry and second.
Martin.
Martin. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce.
This will have no impact on the rates, the reduction of $800,000 in the budget. The rates. Oh, no, you're right. Yeah, the rates, $800,000 coming up.
Given that you need $17 million to move rates.
It's transferring money from that year. No impact.
So through the chair, so bringing it forward is really just a timing issue, so it will have an impact, but obviously with anything that's CapEx, it's the following year that you have impact because you borrow the money and then you start paying the next year. So $800,000 of CapEx is 0.1% on the district rates. So we're 0.1% change the district rates now rather than in a year's, that I suppose 12 months earlier than it would have done.
Thank you, Bruce. Item 3.2, license to occupy application, Hauraki Rail Trail Shelter, Kōpū Bridge, Pakura Close, Kōpū Thames, revised location. Could I get a mover and a second? Councillor Grant and Councillor Rogers. Thank you. Are you here to answer questions on this?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if Ed's online or not, but yeah, I'm here for questions.
Do you have anything to add? Bruce?
No, through the chair, it's pretty straightforward. Happy to take questions, do my best to answer them.
So I have a question. In the summary, it talks about in June 21, council approved in principle the licence to occupy. Then it said no action's been taken by the trust, the Hauraki Rail Trail Trust, as the site was identified as a potential site for the position of a temporary store, which I think they were talking about a shipping container. So I guess I'm just curious as to how Kōpū Bridge and Community Trust were able to stop this happening by saying, oh, it would be nice if we could have a shipping container on that site. And then since then, a year and a half, obviously lots of stuff happening in that year and a half has gone by and nothing's happened. And I'm just curious that doesn't sound like it's process.
So through the chair, and I don't know if it's covered in Ed's report or not, but from my knowledge and understanding of the site, there's obviously been some challenges there around the Cook Memorial. And so there's been a lot of things going on with the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, as well as our local mana whenua. So those are some of the reasons why we've managed, why things have kind of been slowed down. So I believe it's just because of that store, the point that you've raised, Councillor Romney. So I think there were some benefits in making and just slowing this down as things have worked their way through a process, and then looking for a more suitable location for that shelter, which I believe we've now identified.
Okay, and I guess like a follow-up question. So you mentioned Ministry of Culture and Heritage. So they've been involved in the discussion and they think it's fine to have
Correct.
the shelter where the
Yes.
Cook Monument. Do you perceive there might be any pushback from our keyboard warrior, our ratepayers, residents?
Through the chair, not really much of a betting man, but yeah, you just, who knows really, I suppose, which way that could go. So there's always a risk, I think, is the answer to that.
Thank you.
Oh, well,
I guess my question then, Bruce, is we talked about a licence to occupy for the shelter. We've never had a proposal or a licence to occupy from the Kōpū Bridge Society for a container, have we? But that would presumably have to go through the same process?
Through the chair, I presume so, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not aware of it.
No, right. Okay, thank you.
And those quick one through the chair, it really is they talk about being a store. There's not food or anything. Is it just going to be like an information centre?
Yeah, through the chair, yeah, not food or anything like that, not a store as in a shop. Yeah.
Shipping out information about the bridge centre.
Presume so.
Okay.
I believe it was a small shipping container to put their gear in so they didn't have to keep moving their gear backwards and forwards. Storage and storage, yeah. Not a shop.
Right.
any further discussion? Put the motion, all those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried, thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. Item 4.1, updates to the statutory delegations register. Alison, are you online? Can you? Thank you. Okay.
So there's two sets of amendments proposed here. The first one is the rather comprehensive RMA delegations, and they go section by section through RMA. There's been no substantive change to them, but what has happened is two of the GMs have been title changes. And so we're asking them to be just reapproved with the new title changes, which is just a very cautious approach to making sure we are sweet clean on those delegations. The second set of delegations are around land transactions. So over a year, close to a year ago, the functions were transferred to the chief executive to basically make some substantive decisions. But the bit that wasn't delegated was the paperwork end where the documents come through. And currently we have two councillors that sign off on the paperwork end of it. And those councillors are very responsive and generally get it done pretty quickly. But there's not a lot of decision making about some of those. And it's felt that they can probably be done internally without troubling the two councillors to sign those documents. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Any further questions? Going to move on a second to receive those. John, Robin, thank you. With the motion, all those in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Item.
Item 1 and 2.
So that was one. Oh,
It's
hang
only,
on,
it's only two.
very important. That clock's wrong.
We look forward to the day when elected members aren't perform the resignation.
So I'm going to suggest, even though on my run sheet we've got morning tea, I'm going to suggest that we
We continue.
I think that's a copy and paste, isn't it?
You know, 2.
So we go to Chief Executive report. Item 4. That's better. I'm alive on that clock.
Yeah, it's good. I've had to send the talk back into it.
Okay, we'll ask Amy to present.
Yep, so we Hayden at the end of the same, just to do the finance part. So I guess, starting.
Sorry. You've missed your slide. Can we please vote for the record? No. I'm sorry.
So concise.
Okay, so, oh, you want to do finance first?
If we can stick to the agenda list, it'd be better.
Finance first.
Cool. So we're basically, we're $3 million favourable to reforecast. And we're basically holding that position at the moment. These are the January results. We've just completed the February results. We've had, through the chair, pretty busy time in finance with the annual plan, the new finance system, a whole lot of work on 3 waters. We've got audit, we've just finished, and we've had also the storm events. We've been quite heavily involved in the process of the rural disaster relief and the business recovery, the payment side of that. So, but yeah, in our overall results, we're favourable to the October reforecast. We're about to do the March reforecast in April. So we'll have 9 months worth of actuals, and we'll be looking to reforecast the 1 year to see where we land. What sort of decisions we still.
Do you see much change? Like you feel that we're on a what's going to happen?
Through the chair, I feel like the next 3 months are going to be testing this will work. I think just with some of the inflationary pressures that we're starting to see come through with some of our contracts, but I'm hoping it's not too far off what we do in October. Until we go through that whole exercise and go out to activity managers and really ask them to give us, an honest sort of prediction of where they're going to end, we won't know. So we need to kind of really go through that process and do it really well.
Through the chair, okay. So, Hayden, the FAR funding, how are we getting on with that?
Probably push that to Bruce.
Through the chair, question was around the FAR funding.
Yeah.
For current stuff. So we currently have a 91% FAR rate, or we have to get done. Well, that rate is in place until the end of June, so it'll be June.
End of June.
Yeah, so we're working for all that stuff. But what we are doing is we're also we're happening, I think it's spoken about it before. On the longer term figure plan, working with what goes A to try and make sure that we get as much funding as we can, because this is a huge issue for us, so not so with much justice. So we would, what we say is try to get a high rate of funding, ideally 100% to try and get all this stuff. So
at the end of June, if you see that we will stick with that 91, and this year will affect down to 91, right, okay.
So as of 1 July, we go to at least 71%.
Right.
But the issue is that the government still haven't put money into the national fund, and then drops down into the regional, into the emergency fund.
Right.
So an announcement from the government will come somewhere in the next couple of months. The timing is always bad for councils, but this is one of the issues we raised with Minister on last week. Thursday was that it's really essential we have some certainty going forward, and he certainly left here knowing that they need to make some decisions on what happens in the next financial year around that rate. So at worst case scenario, we start at 71%, and the number we're talking about is between 35 and 50 million. So, and whether that's over 1 year or 2, we're still talking over a couple of years. Yep.
It's a big lump at 71%.
It is a big lump at 71%, but the same principles apply. It's extraordinary. It's something that we don't see, we haven't seen before. It's unprecedented. So that ticks the box in terms of taking the far rate up, but it will require a bespoke business case to go through the NZTA system, unless the government make a call like they did in the last financial year for the coming financial year. From a government perspective, though, we're sitting there going, what's the cost of this event before they make those calls? And the cost of the event is still isn't known, because the geotech is still happening and the engineers are still working through the design across the country. So from a government perspective, they want to get a handle on what is it nationally, and therefore what will the country put in to pay for that. And we're part of that package, I believe.
So the government's new legislation they're just putting through at the moment around emergency management and dealing with issues like consents and things, will that fall into this discussion?
It's sort of related, but separate to the financial conversation. So, and I should add also that the government have already signalled the government position statement on roading. They've already signalled that the next document will have some importance around resilience, and that bucket is likely to be bigger. So we're sorted in the short term with the 91%. We are hopeful in the medium term about what announcements will come shortly to give us that certainty. And in the longer term, I think we're pretty hopeful that resilience is super important to the next funding round. The next 3-year land transport plan will be focusing on resilience, and Mayor Lynn's been advocating to regional mayors, and certainly it was reflected in the regional CS in the meeting on Friday, that it's time the Thames government will have an injection, and was supported by the region to deal with the roading issue that we had. So if you think of it in three buckets, looking reasonably hopeful on all of them, well, certainly on one of them, hopeful on 2 of them, but we really need that funding decision to give us that certainty before we adopt our annual plan.
So just through the chair, just so I can understand this, the repairs related to the storm event, which is at 91%, could change to 71%, depending on timing issues of getting things into NZTA.
So everything we get done before the 30th of June. Sorry? Yeah.
Surely if it
will be at 91%.
If it still relates to the storm event, then it should still apply at the 91%, shouldn't it?
So through the chair, that's part of the discussion, because it normally doesn't work like this as far as where they've gone, you can do that. So that's an over and above unusual situation of funding that they've extended. And so they've said, okay, that can go through to June. So I think, as Aileen said, this is an evolving space. And so if we've got 3 buckets, there's a certainty around that, but we're still waiting on certainty for the other 2 buckets. So it is a little bit of a challenging space at the moment.
Which encourages almost a delay, to try and reduce the cost of central government, doesn't it?
So through the, I don't think so. I think it's just that, as Aileen mentioned, they've got all over the country, so they're trying to get a handle on what all of these costs are, how they prioritise and how they move money around the areas. The different programs that they've had running through what they're saying. So it's just that they've just got to try and work through that. I guess it's an account, but that's certainly if they haven't worked through that yet.
I think that I hear what saying, John, my concern is that the ability to pay, if it's at $40 million or 71%, that's a big lump for us to buy. 90 is a whole lot more acceptable, even though it hurts. So this is a real juggling for the moment.
In the normal scheme of events, that's NZTA normally make a decision around the funding somewhere around June, and it's usually quite tight to get the end plan into line with it. And in some circumstances, the decision is split past the time that council effectively account for the annual plan. But this time the heat's in government to make that decision earlier. Hope they do. But there is a potential that they might just make a sort of an extraordinary decision earlier than the normal decision making process.
So you feel at the moment we are on track for that decision to happen?
Well, it's not through lack of communicating the need for it. I'm certain we've communicated it to the highest powers in the land and that they understood it.
Lee, you feel comfortable?
There's a lot of work gone into communicating the message on multiple levels, particularly with central government, with Michael Wood, who is Minister of Transport, and the recovery team. So there's been a huge amount of work going into getting that message across. The other thing that I've really got to stress is that the importance of the regional relationships, so that when the funding does come through the regional level, that we have the support of the regional mayors and that we have the support of the Transport Committee in terms of prioritising that funding to come to us. So there's a lot of work, and I've asked John, who's our delegate on the Regional Transport Committee, to back me up. We're going to team up on that, aliens and behind the scenes as well. So am I confident? I'd have to say I am. The messaging that we're getting back, or the vibe that we're getting back, is that they want to support, but there's a lot of work to do. We have to make some assumptions, and I guess maybe either Hayden or Raylene around our annual plan going forward. We have to make some assumptions about what we put in there.
Yep. So I'm going to scare Hayden.
Okay.
So as we go through the annual plan, yes, if we have a decision from NZTA, all well and good, we can move ahead. If we haven't got a decision from them, we then have to, I guess the worst case scenario is we put on 71%, but we could also make an assumption of 100%.
So just to be clear on that, if we make it comes with risks. If we make an assumption of 71%, we've also got to put some numbers into the annual plan, which the 29% difference has to be funded. And so there are implications in the annual plan for that 29%. We go in at 100%, and we're likely to get audit tagged. In other words, why are you making an assumption? Okay, but does it have implications further down the track for us making an assumption on something that we don't know what we're going to get?
It will, because further down the track, we then don't, if it doesn't come through and we don't have funds for it, then that.
So that's the risk of.
So at the moment, it's quite a lot of unknowns, and we've actually got a little bit of time because we don't need to make this decision until somewhere in the late end of June, and then a little bit before, so the guys can actually do the financial modelling of it. So at this point, I'd suggest this is a major issue for us for discussion and adoption, unless we get a decision earlier, in which case it'll be.
Certainly is. And just a quick calculation, $50 million, 19%. We're talking a reason, just nearly $10 million.
$11 million. So if we look at
71.
would they come up with an option and say, if you get the 100% support, you're going to get less funding, or you're going to go?
Sorry, guys. So it's just really important points being made here, and I want to hear all of them. So can we?
So yeah. So the 71% might come with a bigger amount of money contributed. or would it be the same amount if it was 100% supported? I'm just trying to figure out how they will work this out. They might come back and say, we'll give you $10 million worth of road upgrade, but we'll pay 100% of the fast funding. Or will they say, this is $40 million, you pay this 19% for both options? Just trying to get my head around, is there any discussion about how that funding will come to us? Will it have some tags to it? If the far funding increases, will it be a tag on how much money do we get from the government? Is that kind of discussion?
No. And it was time to just do a very quick back on the envelope. So worst case scenario, it's an extra 2% rates rise.
That's 71%.
On how much?
That's the 10.
40 million.
No.
29% difference between 71% bar.
21%.
Yeah, on the basis of 50 million, which has.
Worst case scenario that it's 71%.
Peter.
So 2 questions. Aileen, did I hear that you're saying the drop dead date for a decision from NZTA is the 19th of June? That you need to have your units, so you need to have a decision.
So we can inform our annual plan adoption. It's around that time is the time we will make a decision.
So
It doesn't mean it's actually going to be made by then. It could be made earlier, it could be made later. Just don't know.
So do you know what date the government is working to come? Is there any way of?
What I was saying before is generally they make the decision around that time, you know, and in a business as usual scenario, they generally make it around then. But this year, I don't, we have got no way of knowing.
Okay. The second question, and I'm not sure I understand the first one actually, but the second question, when a decision is made, that funding, so that there's the funding decision, but the amount of money we actually get is going to be determined by the region. NZTA's region.
So first, no, the board, NZTA board. So firstly, what happens, so this is a normal operating situation, is that the government says, right, this is the amount of money that we'll put into that bucket. Then the NZTA board have a look at it and they go, right, that means in terms of the farm rates across the country, they look like this. So that's kind of that process. The regional one referred to is for the longer term funding that flows from so there's 2 different streams here. The other one is that the regional land transport committee make a regional land transport plan that then flows into extra projects. I don't know how to describe them.
Yeah, that's right. So there's the NLTP, so it's the National Land Transport Program. So the regional land transport program feeds into the National Land Transport Program. So all those regional plans from around the country, that helps determine where Waikato is spending all their money and where the priorities are. So obviously priorities have been in different places over the last 10 years, you know, like things have changed. But I think what we're hearing now is that there's obviously everything that's happened in January and February across the country, resilience and adaptation and moving forwards, a little bit better is typically our focus.
So through the chair, just to clarify, anything in excess of 71% we are subject to whatever the government decides to put in the bucket. And then it's distributed according to demand.
So through the chair, one other thing I should have said, which maybe I can explain that well, and what they're confusing us. Our normal fire rate is 51%. So we get 51% funding for everything that we put through the Waikato system. When you spend over 10% of your operating expenditure in one financial year on emergency works, then it jumps up to 71%. So we've obviously gone way past that, we put 71%. Now, so we've got 70%, as long as we get everything in this financial year and apply for funding through the system, it'll be funded at 71. But what's happened is because we've gone over and above and way over that, that's why the couple of companies said that we'll fund it at 91%. But we can only commit to that for the this financial year because of the reasons we've already talked about. So that's how that 3 later
I hear that, Bruce, but then I also hear that is subject to how much is actually put into the bucket.
That bucket is wrong. So that bucket got 250 million, so that was announced a month or so ago. So that 250 million announcement went into that bucket. And that's what secured our 91% until the end of June.
But everything is going in and is being, over subscribed at the moment because of the amount of damage there is around the country. So is that 91 likely to be scaled back if we exceed the 250?
No, that is certain. So we've been told that is a certain.
Sacrosanct.
So just, we estimate we've got $50 million worth of roading and repairs that need to be done. It's possible we might only get funding for 38 million of that, for instance.
Depending on the far rate, that's, so I guess, Peter, to help answer your question,
I get it. We don't get a sum of money that we then go away and use. We do a project and we get funded for 71%.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can't just go, okay, never mind, we won't spend that, we'll just spend this.
Yeah.
Be per piece of work.
Okay, so we're going to need to prioritise our 50 million worth of repairs that need being done.
So it's everything is prioritised that goes into the system, the EZTA system, and as Alex correctly said, everything goes into project and sites, so site specific. So we'll obviously have our highest priority, so public road at the moment, it's our highest priority, so that's the first one. And that, the team are flat out working on all this stuff, and we've got some numbers, which is what's giving you the 50.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. Can I just go back to my second question? Aileen, at which point are you going to start feeling uncomfortable about not getting a decision out of NZTA about the funding?
I feel, sorry. I guess we either get a decision or we don't. It's either 71%.
Right.
Or some other number. The question for me is if we don't get the decision, what do we do? That's the part that will keep me awake at night.
Yeah.
The previous scenario is black and white, we get this and we get that. But if we don't get it, then we want to sit down and talk to councillors about what do we do next and what are the risks of the various.
So you don't think we're at that point at this stage?
No, absolutely not. No, we've got, what is it, end of March, April. So I think we need to have this conversation.
Thank you. Okay.
Which gives us another 6 weeks to be applying.
Yeah,
so
yeah, just a quick one.
Martin and I have a question as well.
Yeah, so just getting your heads around all this on the money side, but also the land transport plan where John's involved with, the stream that comes through him, isn't that mayoral decisions come around that? So that I see as the risky area, having that relationship really important there, because that package will come through that group and it then becomes a lot of political discussion about who gets what, doesn't it? So having our on the table and then pushing that button is going to be a big difference between getting it and not getting it. I think that's the key. That's the high risk area for me.
Well, it's about ensuring that Thames Coromandel District has sufficient priority to get what is going to be more than our fair share.
Yeah.
We're at a point now where we need more than our fair share.
So that's a big.
In the past, the Regional Land Transport Committee has put a lot of effort, and Waikato Mountain Forum put a lot of effort into the Thames Safe Highway, Waikato Expressway, and there's been a lot of effort pumped into doing that. And that was partly because Thames Coromandel voice at the table might not have been as loud as it should have been in the past.
Yeah, right.
So we've got an opportunity and also an imperative to make sure that we have a loud voice at both of those tables so that we can get, as I said, more than our fair share of funding because we need it. I just, Martin, you had a...
No, I was just, I think I've heard sufficient. Well, sorry, not saying that you can't talk, but I think I've heard.
So just one thing I need clarity on, Bruce, and I am still a little bit confused about the far rate. 51% is our standard far rate. There was a decision made, and I don't know who made it, into the government to add during the emergency recovery period 40% across the board. Now that took us from 51 to 91%, And it took other councils who start at 61 to 60% to 100%. I'm just a bit unclear of how that sits in terms of the 71%. So I'm confused about the 40%.
Yes, so the 40% is because it's an extraordinary event. So, which I think we understand. Are you trying to query about why other councils are on 60 versus now?
We haven't made it 60, we're only 51.
Okay, I just have a basic
There's a whole process, and as you might, anyone can remember, one time, I think we were on like 46%. So we did get brought up to 51 years ago. Every council has got a different rate, and there's calculations that they go through as to how they work out that. So it's around deprivation, it's around geography, it's around a whole range of things like that. So and vehicle numbers on the roads. So there's a real challenge for us, you know, as we know about holiday population, we know that high vehicle numbers will be what we do for a very short time. It's one of those calculations that the federal government agencies doesn't really work that well for us. And so we pushed and pushed over the years. There's been pushed on a political level, but we've managed to get above that 51. Everything's very constrained in systems, as you can imagine, through so that's why we have to rates for other.
Just on that, so the land diesel contribution is 50% nationwide, isn't it? So we're 1% better than the average.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The other thing I would add is around the regional land transport stuff. So we're talking about it's important to have a voice in the economy. It is very important. But I think as Amy mentioned, that's more like looking forwards about making sure we get that allocation where the rest of the region is said actually with the allocations and like an expressway down to the TCDC around resilience and adaptation. So that's a different conversation from trying to get as much money to deal with immediate emergencies. So the immediate issues that we've got and the stuff over the next 2 years we'll be building, that's not like reliant on the other areas of the region saying, yeah, we agree. So that's just an NZTA that's a government conversation with us around that.
On the term.
That helps.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we've sidetracked a little bit, but it is important stuff, and these questions are going to keep coming up. So back to Hayden or back to you? Back to Hayden. Thank you.
Yeah, for the chair, so we're sitting okay against reforecast, and February was in line with January. So it'll come down to the next 4 months as to and that March reforecast is going to be really, really important as to where we finish 22. So we'll go out to the wider organisation and obviously work together on bring that together and then bring it back to council to show us where we're going to land.
Thank you, Dave.
Right, okay, so in the report, I've added a paragraph on recovery, and this was just as a web print, but the information changed again. So you know we have employed Stephen Town, and he's currently in the car with Gary driving around the northern part of the country, having a look at the roads. So Stephen's been very helpful in setting up the kind of a program across council. So it's not like he's got a ton of staff reporting to him. He's basically just setting up across the council, linking up the bits that are impacted by recovery. We've established weekly operational briefings just to understand how things are taking, any risks around roading, waste, three waters, and other operational matters. Yesterday we held a forum with sort of like an EOC, bringing in all the partners, supply service, health, and so on. So monthly we're going to meet with them. It was a really useful day actually talking about how the other agencies are coping with the issues that they're having. And we will advocate on behalf of, say, the likes of DOC, for example, who have huge amounts of damage in their tracks and trails and so on. And interestingly, in their underground infrastructure around toilets and so on, they've got some quite big challenges. So just we'll be able to support, advocate for them in terms of getting their assets back up to scratch because they underpin our tourism industry, for example. So just getting some joined up stuff going on in there. We've had some pretty good conversations with Hauraki about, and I try not to confuse you again with the financial aspects, but we're looking at it in terms of the short term. How do we work with Hauraki, given Higgins are out there delivering on ground for them, and our contractors are out on the ground delivering for us. How do we make sure we're competing with subcontractors and those types of issues? The staff at Waka Kotahi are also looking at, so the 25A of course is happening, and that seems to be moving ahead reasonably well despite what the community might think and be seeing. It actually is going reasonably well in terms of the program.
Just a second, we've had a few letters recently about having a access road, a one-way access road around so people get through. Is there any discussion around that?
Yeah, there has been, and look, I'm not a technical expert, so I'm not going to venture an opinion on that, but the options they're looking at do include bypass, but probably not in the short term.
No, listen to the concern they were saying, well, they were saying until May, they were going to make a decision until May, which is 2 months down the track. Could some sort of access road be put in place? If that was the question was asked, is that possible?
That hasn't, the NZTA have not indicated that being a possibility to them.
As we discussed.
Yeah. Okay, so they're looking at, so that's 25A. Also looking at a package of other works, they're calling it 2 years no regrets investment. So what they're talking about there is doing investments where no matter what you do going forward, you're never going to regret having made that investment. So sort of build back better sort of type scenario. I'm not clear how that's been funded, but that's kind of their issue to think about. But the big prize, in my view, is the longer term planning. And what they want to do is sit down and do basically an accessibility business plan, business case for the peninsula. So whether it's a local road or an NZTA road is sort of beside the point. It's about how do I maximise accessibility. And that's the project that will go forward into the regional land transport process. And that's a very big dollar value. Can speculate, but it's right up there. It's bigger than 25A is my point. So that's the really important long-term piece of work that we need to be engaging in. That will be a very community stakeholder engagement type process that we're in the very early stages of planning.
So another question if I can around that, the 25A, is there opportunity within the discussion of what the Kotahi about doing some remedial work on the road when no one's on it for the year?
Yeah, that's been discussed. That's their call. Yeah. Yes, that's been a discussion.
And then what you were just talking about before, did we initiate that, or was that initiated by Kotahi?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest, but it was definitely in the ask that we put to ministers in January. I'm losing track of when we asked for what, but yeah, it was in January when we said, look, let's do this, join them together. And I have to say the staff have been great, and some really good thinking going on. Just got to make sure we keep the action going on. Having Stephen in the room, that's very, very useful because he used to have a lot of the TA, he was the manager of the TA, so that's very helpful. He knows how the systems work and there's a level of respect inside the organisation, so that's been quite useful.
Sorry, Ricky, you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, not everyone was at the session when Michael Wood, Minister Wood came. I wonder, maybe while we had a cup of tea, those didn't, because he was really good to listen to. And, you know, there's lots of thinking and a lot of these questions, you know, they are really, I got the sense they're really sort of going for it. They're working hard, they're not mucking around. It is just a massive job. You know, like a little bypass road around the back is not as straightforward, you know, when you think about the size of it and the volume of material that's moving in that slip. So,
good point, Rebecca.
Yeah.
It is the statement that leaked out to me and stuff in my brain. There's no review.
exactly. You know, and he's getting regular updates from the team, you know, weekly. He's wanting to understand. So people are moving and working on it. It's just a huge job.
And the other point that he made very clearly was that the legislation that's going through Parliament at the moment under urgency
Yes.
Will mean that, similar to what happened in Pakura and Christchurch, once decisions are made about the best option, there will not be any resource consent delays. There won't be, you know, he is he was going to have you sign those off and get the work done.
Through the chair, I think my view of that meeting was it was a comprehensive summary of what happened on 25A. I didn't leave that meeting with comfort around a total view of all of the state highway networks around the Coromandel. And I remain very concerned around our vulnerabilities around the wider network, and particularly, the several spots that we have that are being closely monitored, which could really be, a disaster for us. And I didn't hear any answers or views around those.
John, John Ross.
Just to follow up on what John's just said, because I was about to raise that, John. Have you heard anything, Aileen, about the coast road, specifically up around the Nile, where it's not just the shoulder that's gone, it's not half the lane, both lanes have slumped quite a lot, probably 8 inches or more, the whole thing. And there's been no work or anything around those, and those are major slumps across the whole of the road. Do you know anything about what they're doing in those areas?
Not specifically, but Higgins have shown us all the places they're worried about, and we're one of them.
Well, they should be very worried because come winter time, there is the real risk that Pongakā, they've got the major hole on the highway up there, but we have 2 that could just go at any time with the right amount of rain, and that's us. We're stuck with hanging through the whole peninsula.
There's 3 places where NZTA or Higgins have said they're really worried about the places. So the team that have got a contingency plan about all this is how long would be closer to the license and make sure we can sort out which barge we use and which.
It would come down to barging as far as getting supplies and Coromandel. And while the one on the Nile is not the length of the rugby field, I'll set up here, it's the bigger, it is about the length of the nickel. And could grow quite quickly, So yeah, I'd be really interested in finding out what contingencies we've got in place and exactly how the work is going to start trying to stabilise those places.
Through the chair again, just understand Councillor Morrissey's concern about Mania Hill being Coromandel town. I would also mention Pumpkin Hill or Tairua Hill as a major concern as well, and a couple of spots around there, and also the well-known one at Poetry, which is also very vulnerable, I understand. So it's the several spots that I think that we've had that all of them are of weight and importance.
Yeah. Through the chair, I circumnavigated the peninsula the other day, and even that one that's on the top of the Kōpū Hill, there's a significant slump there. So that whole access to the peninsula has got several pinch points which are really gnarly. I was quite worried.
Please don't be under any illusion that messaging, the meeting that was held last Thursday has been sent very clearly, loudly back to the Minister and Monaco Tahi, who were represented at that meeting. The community, the district, business community, individuals are very concerned. So that messaging has been sent back loud.
It would be good, Lean, if this council could have some sort of information feedback from what Tahi is to what their priorities are, and we would like to see some movement on those. It would be much appreciated.
Thank you.
Take that as an action.
Can I just take through the chair, is Minister Wood our minister for disaster? Because it seems there was 2. Are we dealing with 2 or dealing with none?
My understanding is that he is the Minister for Auckland and Waikato in the Recovery Task Force, but there is a shared responsibility with Minister Mahuta, who's also got Waikato responsibilities. And if I'm honest, behind the scenes, I'm not quite sure how that sits when we get requests to sit down and do meetings with either of them or take those, because we're taking every opportunity that we can to get our messaging through. Most of the contact at the moment seems to be with Minister Wood And as Minister for Transport,
It's good.
seen that, and also probably the minister who's been responsible for assisting us with getting business recovery and support grant funding through to ensure that we maintain that level of support for our business community.
So we are communicating with the Waikato Civil Defence network, but we're also communicating with Minister Wood's office directly, but also the recovery structure that's been set up in Auckland. So we're sort of reporting these two different ways, which then goes through into the task force. But government have just set up a cyclone recovery unit and they're recruiting 30 or 50. They're recruiting a whole bunch of staff into Wellington to administer the cyclone recovery. And it's not clear yet which regional structure they're going to work through to get onto the ground. But it's really important that we work with whatever regional structure it is. At the moment it's 2, so that's fine. We'll just keep it. Right, okay, so we also have money in the system, which has been quite amazing actually. So we ended up with 903,000 sitting in the Mayoral Disaster Relief Fund.
903, yeah.
903, yep. And we had 205 leave the organisation yesterday, which has been a huge amount of work to continue. And we have another 126 leaving the organisation today. Staff have done a huge amount of work setting that up and administering it and making sure the checks and balances are in place. We also had the business recovery funding, which came in 2 pieces. So it is, I've got 5 million there, but I think it's ended up being 4 million. 4.1, sorry, is that right? Yeah, 4.1 million. No, sorry, it's 3.8.
It's going down.
Okay, so I think we can lay this in the public.
So is it 3.8?
Sorry, is that the number that what people have applied for? Is that what we've got to hand out?
That's what we've got to hand out. So this is 3.9. And we've got the 160,000 for the council to administer it, which means funding the staff and background to actually do it. So that we believe.
But we oversubscribed in that, aren't we? But we're undersubscribed with the mayoral relief. Can we move money around?
No.
Criteria are quite different. So we've had 508 applications for the business grants, and we've got 400k heading out the door. But given the scale of that, we've got to just make sure our checks and balances are robustly done. Free water doesn't feel like a potential at the moment, does it?
Just ask a question related to that. So where are we at in regard to the likely scaling back of the applications? Have you formed a view around that on the business fund?
So we put together a panel which is some external folk, and they'll make those sorts of calls.
Yeah, the applications all closed Friday, so it's been shut off the way. And so as I alluded to, we'll be oversubscribed with that. So what we did is the first panel meeting, it was the most sustained businesses that were impacted, we dealt with first. And then the panel sort of get on and they'll do the rest of the application from here.
So have you formed a view though that you can only pay at 50% of what you were originally?
Yes, so there was criteria which we measured it against. So there will be some businesses what they applied for, they won't get as much they requested, but then that be taken into the assessment as well.
Part of that, John was just holding off until we got confirmation of the final money. And the other thing that needs to be said is that is for the Waikato, so although most of the applications are from Thames Continental.
So is that the final amount, 3.8, or is it likely to, is there any opportunity that might go up by more, knowing that it's so oversubscribed?
Just in terms of that, the total amount asked for 4.1, total amount received 3.9. So we're not oversubscribed on those numbers.
Not. But we did indicate when this was here on last week, and the business community code to detail that, you know, there's going to be a lot of pain long term.
Yeah.
So we are very mindful of that, and so we will be looking to see if there is more opportunity to support businesses with more funding from government.
And specifically around 25A, the discussion coming from the minister was that there is a realisation of 25A cannot be expected to be open by Christmas. And those businesses that need that Christmas turnover, there is an expectation that they will need support through that period, and they are working on that. No guarantees. None of us has any certainty around that, but they are aware that there is business support needed through that period.
So this recovery grant for the chair comes into the Waikato, and it's distributed from the Waikato out.
We distribute it to 4 councils in the Waikato district, but most of the applications that come through from Thames Coromandel businesses.
Right, so they looked at that option, where can the money be split?
So the money has come to us to administer for the whole of Waikato.
Right.
But 90% of the applications have been drawn from Thames Coromandel, which you'd expect because we were hit the hardest. But there are some coming through from other areas that we are administering.
It's not an ideal situation in hindsight, whoever made the decision, probably having no.
But I totally support the fact that it came to us to administer though, because the local knowledge that's super important when these applications are being assessed.
Aileen, you updated, there was more than 350 applications, did you say?
500.
508.
508, thank you.
And that in itself creates a significant level of work because there's a degree of trust and confidence that goes along with us administering that money, because we've got to make sure that there's no gaps in there, there's no applications that are non-robust. There's a lot of checking, staff, a huge amount of work going through that.
And the admin of that is funded. Thank you.
So in terms of Three Waters, it's still travelling along. So I met with Paul Kane last week, and the way he expressed it, so he's the CEO of the entity B, or whatever, maybe a collection of entities, depending on quite where the legislation lands. His view was that he wanted to continue working on no regrets work. So the work that we're doing with the National Transition Unit is stuff that will need to be done regardless of which model lands. At least that's the view. So Bruce has been busy dealing with the NTU. They're beginning to talk to staff about the potential transfer across to the entity. Donna and Bruce held a really successful meeting around debt. So if there's any questions, they can answer those. But they came out smiling, so our figures were aligned and that they do intend to take on all the debt.
There seem to be some issues around the NTU versus the DIA discussions that when I was having to talk about how they were dealing with the different councils. Is that so for us, or you feel we're getting a fair deal?
Through the chair, I wouldn't say so. I think it's pretty upfront. Unless you talk about stuff between DIA and the NTU, which I'm privy to that. Obviously the NTU is set up as a part of the DIA. So the NTU then works with our link then is the LTT group, but we love the initialisation and stuff. But the local distancing, that's our council's way into the NTU, which is DIA's. And it's working pretty well.
It's working okay for us. And so the minister was talking about making a statement in the next couple of months. Is that still on board?
Yep. Understand Cabinet will be making decisions within the next 2 weeks.
Next 2 weeks.
And then we'll hear something hopefully.
Anything by
Waiting for that.
Which is more than today is looming. So I'm just wondering if we just take the rest as agreed. Does anyone have any questions?
It's just one thing, the $1.24 million. So the way it's been there or? Yeah, COVID. So
it's underwritten by Thames. Sorry,
it's underwritten. That's one that's underwritten by Thames. If we can't get it, is that? That's the way it is. Okay.
But there are active applications, more than one for the WRC Development Fund approvals pending should be submitted by 27th of April on that report, which takes.
Yeah.
And the question I got through Sugar Loaf too is, and maybe it's John might be able to help, or maybe there's some resolution can be reached before the parties, before the court action. Is this likely? Or do you think it'll go for? Is there a feeling that there is a way forward?
So without going into the company stuff, it will be appropriate to do so. I think if you stand back and look at it, I think it's fairly obvious that there doesn't seem to be a resolution possible.
Well said.
Could I be so bold as to make a suggestion that we have morning tea? I've got a couple of questions about the transition to recovery report, but maybe we do morning tea first?
Fully agree. Week.
I'll second. No, I can't second.
It's up to the mayor.
So we would have gone to public excluded after that.
No, we've still got the one on, the local controller, 4.3.
It's only really one question, so maybe.
Perhaps we had just a short morning tea break and bring a cup of tea back. I'm just going to turn up in an hour.
Okay, so Martin has more questions, so we're not going to close out that item. But morning tea, want to have that now?
Yep.
You hang out there.
Proposal is that we have some tea.
I was away. I didn't come.
You weren't here
I
then.
wasn't here.
Scratch